In the spirit of Sankofa, we come together to honor the rich and diverse history of our community. While we have made every effort to celebrate the joys, triumphs, and contributions of everyone in Newburgh, we acknowledge that we may not have been able to include every family, place, or aspect of the African American community in our celebration. We recognize that the story of our collective heritage is vast and ever evolving, and we are committed to continuing this journey of reflection, celebration, and inclusion. We are grateful to all who make Newburgh a vibrant and dynamic community, and we will continue to work towards ensuring that every voice is heard and valued. Thank you for being a part of this beautiful journey that makes our community so special.
Looking to the future, Newburgh's African American community is united by the lessons of the past. From the struggle of the 1950s to the triumphs of today, the spirit of Sankofa guides the way. The wisdom of yesterday builds the strength of tomorrow. Together, we rise, not just as individuals, but as a community bound by shared history, values, and vision. In the heart of Newburgh, the past and future are one. Through the Sankofa philosophy, we are reminded that to move forward, we must first look back. Together, we carry the legacy of our ancestors into a future full of hope, promise, and unity.
Yeah, I've always heard a lot of bad things about Newburgh, but Newburgh's been good to me. I think it's the person. It's what you make out of it.
I had a good upbringing at the old Montgomery Street School. Back then, the black neighborhood was like Water Street, South Water Street.
She rented a house on Montgomery Street prior to buying a house.
Most blacks was on Smith Street, a few on Chambers Street. From Chambers Street was from South to Gidney, just that one block.
We could go down on the waterfront and play and go in the water.
The greatest experience I can tell you about is coming down 17K in Broadway and getting to that point where you see no land and all you see is water.
Sylvester McLaren was born in Smithfield, North Carolina. He came to Newburgh in the mid-50s. He was looking for a job, looking for opportunities.
She came from a little town in Elizabethtown, North Carolina, where her dad was a very prominent black business owner.
These blacks came up from the South to pick the fruit, apple orchards and whatever. And once they found out that they could get hired at a better price at factories, they all came, bought their wives, and went to work.
Then my father got a job at the brickyard, and he moved us to Newburgh.
The reason all the blacks were living on Water Street was because they could walk across the street to go to work.
It was, Newburgh was a city. Well, it was, they wasn't really progressive, but as far as like unskilled labor was concerned, you didn't have to have a lot of formal education in order to make progress.
Back in the day when I was growing up, everybody worked.
Applying for jobs was easy then because, all you had to do was walking off the street and if they was hiring, you was hired right on the spot.
Everybody had 2 and 3 jobs. I had a couple of jobs all the time.
She was a strong black woman back then, and she made sure we had everything we needed when we needed it.
During that time, she was, busy trying to raise her kids, and she was working. She started off working in these pocketbook factories. The one that she worked in was called Dubix.
I decided to go to work at Regal Bag pocketbook factory. A lot of black people worked there.
I brought home $26 for 40 hours. I think I was making 70 or 75 cents an hour.
I was the second black to work at Central Hudson on Broadway. And I would try and help to get someone else get a job there.
I'm the oldest living a member of Local 17. At one time, 60% of the local was black because of all the road work we were doing. We did the Palisades Parkway, New York State Thruway. I worked on the Tappan Zee Bridge. Then I worked on the Newburgh Beacon Bridge.
In the heart of Newburgh, black families fought to secure a better way of life, creating businesses, schools, and a strong sense of community.
We had black-owned bars all the way down to the waterfront. You had Cheatham's Bar, Robinson's Bar.
Then they had Slocum's Bar with a park right across the street on Smith Street.
On North Water Street, Buddy Lewis and them had stores.
My name was Floyd and my wife was named Round. And we had F&M Variety.
And my mom had a beautician business in the basement of the house in West Palmetto. So she was an entrepreneur too in her own right.
If you went into business, you really got the support from the neighborhood.
She was a hairstylist, salon owner at Exotic Beauty Salon on South Street.
Lewis Howard owned the gas station. Deacon Danny Warren owned a upholstery shop. Sally owned the beauty salon.
Sally Warren, who was also another salon owner, who my mom pretty much was mentored by for a while until she became a licensed stylist.
Yeah, there was quite a few barber shops.
And I think there was a bunch of plumbers and electricians and things of that nature, contractors.
They had a pool room right down the corner of Smith and 4th Street.
That was the big thing in our family, that we were to be entrepreneurs. And my mother said she was raising entrepreneurs.
Ebenezer, Reverend Bass, the Methodist Church. They were like the 3 black churches here. They were all on Water Street at the time. Miss Hutto had that restaurant, and Miss Wilson made those sweet potato pies.
And there was Luther Skidwood Moving, where he did long distance moving and stuff.
Bob Dotson had the restaurant. We went to his restaurant. We supported one another. You know, it was really a close-knit community. Everybody looked out for each other's kids. Can I get a cup of sugar? Can I get a cup of flour? There was no questions asked. It was given.
And people cared more for each other. We looked out for each other. But today, you know, you don't even know who your next door neighbor is.
Originally in 1946, a group of women came together and they wanted to do something to help the young people in the city of Newburgh. And they called it the Community Workers Association. I came through there and it kept me off the streets. It kept me out of trouble. But we played basketball, and then we had dances on Friday and Saturday nights.
CWA had gotten so big, and my dad was coaching everything, but they figured they needed somebody with an education. Glenn Hines had an education. In fact, his wife was one of the first black teachers in Newburgh.
Mr. Hines, who was very special.
You know, he had like basketball teams and track and, you know, stuff like that.
Like Mr. Hines kept us busy running and doing everything.
Now, the Women's Basketball Association, Mr. Hines got in touch with them, and the first international female basketball tournament was held in Newburgh. A lot of people don't realize that.
And there was another group of people who started the Lander Street Community Center. And then after a period of time, they come to merge together, and it became the Community Centers of Newburgh.
That's when they moved up by the park up there now. So we renamed it Glenn Hines Center.
In the 1950s, Newburgh's African American community stood at the crossroads of progress and adversity.
Urban renewal, in my opinion, was the worst thing that happened to Newburgh.
The houses were going to be torn down, and blacks were supposed to be relocated to, to an area where it would be beneficial to them. But that basically that wasn't the case.
Well, they what they did was the people we was renting from, they actually got money, for their building. I don't think it was really that much, but they got something. And they were the ones that told us that we had to move out.
It looked like they forced people out of their homes that had homes on Montgomery and Smith into the projects.
Everybody that lived on North Water Street and South Water Street ended up in foreign apartments.
You had nice homes on Smith Street, Montgomery Street, and then them streets stayed vacant for years. And then the riverfront was bare for what, 20, 25 years.
The banks and all the businesses just relocated. Most of them went out to the town of Newburgh.
And like to me, the urban renewal came through there and just took people's property, really right from underneath them.
For a fact, he preached the whole time about home ownership, owning your stuff, not renting your stuff. He was very frustrated with renters. He felt as though we had opportunities, we could find money, find grants to buy instead of always renting and borrowing.
Despite the struggles, they built a legacy of resilience rooted in faith, family, and the fight for equality.
White people that came through, and they was just calling people, niggers and all that kind of stuff, and then there was a fight, and people started hitting them with bricks and all that kind of stuff, and breaking out windows. People were mistreated, and then when we had the riots here in Newburgh, once you got below Robinson Avenue on South Street, that's when you saw the difference. People sort of shunned you because of your color. And then you had people that did not want to be bothered with you. And I can remember when we purchased our home on Chambers Street. We were the first black on our side of Chambers Street. There was white on this side, white on that side, and white across the street. And if you could have seen the for sale signs going up, you wouldn't believe it. They didn't want to live next to us.
Newburgh was at the hub at that time of a $5 billion market. Within 3 to 5 hours, you're in Boston, you're in Canada, New York City, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and we were right at the hub of it with the transportation and everything right there. And we didn't take advantage of it because of prejudice. Audrey L. Carey was an African-American black female mayor. When things would come down from Albany, it would be stopped by the city manager. It's going to be so surprising at the end of time for those of us that do make it to heaven. When we get there, we're going to see so many different colors and ethnicities and people. We're going to say, whoa, why didn't that happen down there? Because you didn't let it.
In the 1960s and 70s, it was a time of turmoil and unrest. Marches for civil rights, struggles against segregation, and the quest for equality echoed through the streets of Newburgh. Every year, the city found itself swept up in riots, a reflection of the deep desire for change and justice.
Well, the civil rights movement, they got together and they began to march. And they marched in New York City, they marched in Cleveland, Ohio, and they marched in the South. And that began to make things change.
They marched in Washington. They did all that stuff. He would protest and respectfully. And
I mean, I experienced the riots and all the National Guards on the rooftops, and I experienced all of that myself.
The reason why he got this street named Martin Luther King, and he really lobbied hard for it, because that was his idol.
Yeah, that was his idol.
Where there's controversy and you stand up to it, you can affect change.
The wisdom of yesterday builds the strength of tomorrow. Together we rise, not just as individuals, but as a community bound by the shared history, values, and vision.
If two people can come from South with no education, very little money, and do the things that they've done over the years, you can do it.
For her to get a keys to a building and be able to go in and make it her own, that was a milestone in my mother's life.
I think that younger people have more opportunity to go out and buy a house. They have good jobs and they can save for the down payment.
Well, I think they got to keep building on what the older people started. You know, don't step backwards. Continue to go forward.
Nothing can stop you from doing and being who you were created to be. You are blessed more than you think.
If I could help somebody as I pass along this way, then my living will not be in vain.
In the heart of Newburgh, the past and the future are one. Through the Sankofa philosophy, we are reminded that to move forward, we must first look back. Together, we carry the legacy of our ancestors into a future full of hope, promise, and unity.